Welcome to A Shot of Ag. My name is Rob Sharkey. I'm a fifth-generation farmer from just outside of Bradford, Illinois. It wouldn't be a farm show if we didn't talk to an ag economist. Now, I know, everybody's like, but this show we get to make fun of the economist. Today we're going to talk with Krista Swanson. How you doing, Krista?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm great. You are a lead economist at the National Corn Growers Association. Whew, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. How long have you been doing that?
So I started this role in November of 2022, so just about 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you a farm girl?
I am. I grew up on a farm.
Where at?
Parents near Hartsburg, Illinois. My parents.
I don't know where that's at.
It's near Lincoln.
Okay.
Kind of between Springfield and Peoria is an easy way to say it. On 155.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is it one?
It's on 155. That runs from the road that connects Peoria and Springfield.
Yeah.
It's about halfway between on those. Corn and soybean, so just grain farm there. And now I live with my husband near where he grew up on his family farm. And we still grow corn and soybeans.
In Oneida.
Oneida, yes.
Yeah, that's part of the ROVA systems.
That is part of the ROVA school district.
Yeah,
so.
but you probably didn't play ROVA in high school, did you? You're probably
no,
too far
we were
south.
too far south, yeah. So, but interestingly enough, ROVA now co-ops with Williamsfield for a lot of sports. And they actually do play a lot of Central Illinois schools, yeah.
How do they fit that in? ROVA?
RW, they just call it RW. Yeah.
That's such a neat area over there. It's just,
It is.
I don't know, as a farmer, I love it because the ground is all flat and perfect, and y'all don't know how to farm hills at all.
Well, actually, that's not true. Since the Central Illinois area is very flat and perfect, I would say. Up where we're at, we have some of that, but actually we farm some timber soil and creek bottoms, and actually the first time we started farming that farm in 2016, and the first time I was down there, I questioned if it was really Illinois.
So, your husband, Brett, where'd you meet him?
Well, we actually met while we were in Louisville for the National Farm Machinery Show.
It's a romantic setting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was it at a bar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we did meet through a mutual friend.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you grew up, did you always have a fascination with economics?
No, actually not. I will say that I did have a baking business in high school, so maybe that was my precursor to economics, but I didn't know it at the time.
Whoa. You had a baking business in high school.
Yeah. So,
like, what were you making?
Anything. Homemade breads, cookies, cakes. I sold baked goods at the local farmer's market. And, it was my FFA project, so I kept track of all the income and expenses and all of that. I actually made quite a few wedding cakes.
Really?
Then in my early 20s.
Yeah, you can't screw around with those. They have to be perfect.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of pressure, and I didn't love... So I love baking as a hobby. That's why I brought the spatula here. Is
that a spatula or is it a spoon?
It's called, I think technically they call it a scraper. I always called it a
spoonula.
Spatula, so I still call it that.
So you got kids, right?
Yeah. So it's dual purpose.
A pay attentioner.
Yeah.
Yeah. In high school, though, did you ever make those, those funny brownies?
No.
Sell them to the kids?
No.
Make a lot of them. You want to talk about economics.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, a serious question, right? Trefker's, you ever heard of them? The Trefker's Bakery here in Peoria?
Oh, yes. Okay.
So if I were to give you a piece of their cake with their buttercream frosting, do you think you could eventually figure out the recipe for me?
Probably not. No. I did like to do a lot of experimenting, not following recipes, but I don't have the skills, I don't think, to recreate. Yeah, the palate to recreate.
How is your buttercream game? Is it a strong?
I always just mostly used like a decorator's buttercream, which isn't it's okay tasting, but it's not like the really. I'm sure that bakery, I've heard great things about it. I'm sure they have like a way better.
I think they put something in there.
Yeah. I'm sure they have a way better.
Something addicting.
something
Yeah.
addicting.
All right,
Yeah.
we should probably get back to you. So you went to U of I?
I did. So yeah, I actually, I guess how we got sidelined there was you asked me if I always knew I wanted to go into economics.
Yeah.
So I actually went into crop sciences as an undergrad and, thought I was going to get a PhD and be a plant breeder. As I went through school, I started to become less interested in that and more interested in the economic and regulatory side of things. So that's kind of how I shifted as I had some different internships and classes. And I don't know, one thing I learned is that as you go through that, sometimes you learn more about what isn't a good fit for you, and you sort of realign with finding what is a good fit.
So you took some internships, some jobs that you didn't like.
Well, I actually liked them fine for the summer, but by the end of the summer, I thought, well, that was fun for a summer, but it's not. I started to figure out like this is not what I want to do long term for a full career. Yes.
Like which one did you like the least?
I don't know. I guess I can tell you some of the things I did.
Then I can pick which one you like the least.
Yeah. I worked for Pioneer in kind of plant breeding for a summer. I worked for Syngenta in more like crop production for the summer. And then
Bayer, did you hit them all?
No, I didn't. But actually, during my last semester of undergrad, I did work for what was Monsanto, now Bayer, at their production facility in Thomasboro. That's fairly close to Champaign. So yeah, I kind of ran the gamut of the big ag crop companies. So,
yes, and you too, BASF. We aren't. No.
I didn't work for them.
That's
ever.
the railroad.
That's the railroad. Yes.
See, now they're really mad.
No, that's BNSF.
Oh,
BASF
yeah, I'm
is
right.
the
BASF.
crop chemical.
Yeah. This is where I really wish we could edit this show.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that wasn't something you wanted to make a lifetime career out of.
Yeah, I think that those helped me kind of reframe the combination of those experiences and some classes, like I said, kind of drew me more into regulatory and learning more about the economic impact of traits. So at that time, we were just starting to have double stack and triple stack traits. And so then I jumped over to ag economics as a grad student. And I actually did my thesis work on kind of a crossover between crop sciences and economics. I was evaluating the economic impact of, those stacked traits on crop yields.
Yeah.
So that was sort of how I transitioned over, and never looked back.
That sounds boring as hell.
I think it's really interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
That's you can look at that stuff and go, ooh.
Yeah. So
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
Economist. Y'all are different, aren't you?
Well, part of my job now is finding ways to take the numbers and communicate those and translate those into a way that's interesting and understandable to anyone who may be watching, listening. So I think that actually being a farmer and working in that role as an economist as well, I can do that, or I guess that helps me be able to make those communications better. Sort of try to make economics really interesting to everyone.
So who are you when you're working at the National Corn Growers?
Yep.
Are you talking mainly to farmers, or do they have you communicating the farmers' information to the general public?
So kind of a combination, and I'm also doing a research and analysis. So kind of all of the above. So some of the work I do is maybe for internal use, like investigating, we have this situation with Mexico right now where they have a ban on GM crops, GM corn specifically, I should say.
Yeah, we had a deal.
Yeah, we had a deal.
Did
we
you
had
tell
the
them that?
USMCA.
Said, hey, guys.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, the, U.S. Trade Representative is, working on that, and we're very thankful for that as an organization. But, doing some investigating on what are happening with trade flows, that's more like an internal use type of document, watching that. I also do, write articles that go on the NCGA website that, anyone may look at, which may be, farmers, media, potentially members of Congress, depending on the topic, or, whatever is happening there. So then that audience is more general. And then we also have times where we're communicating with farmers. So it's kind of the whole gamut of audiences, depending on the situation.
What is harder for you to communicate with, the farmers or the non-farmers?
I suppose maybe non-farmers. I feel like I can connect with farmers, being a farmer myself.
You speak Agonese.
Yes, speak Agonese,
Okay.
yes. So, but at the same time, I also have quite a bit of experience talking with the non-ag community and, media and just non-farmers in general. So, I don't know, I think I can do both.
You write a lot of articles.
Yes.
It's got to be hard because I've been in ag enough. I know how it goes, right? If you, to use a term, dumb down an article enough to where the general person that does not know anything about farming can understand it, then your farmers are probably going to get upset at you because you have dumbed it down too much.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you just have to write in a way that's easily understandable, no matter who your audience, even if you're speaking to a room of farmers. You can't assume that they all are at the same understanding level of the topic you're communicating. So you're always going to have that where someone knows more about what you're saying than others. So I think you just do the best you can to hit that middle of the road, especially if that's the goal setting. I also have been trying to do one new thing that we just did the first episode of last week was, so whenever I put out an article for National Corn Growers, we are also going to do like a less than 2-minute video called the Maize Market Minute.
That's clever.
Yeah. So
Zea mays is the scientific name for corn.
Yeah, I guess we could explain that. So Maize Market Minute, and that is a little bit more high level. Like, in the one pager, you're going to have more numbers along with the text. That video sort of takes some of the numbers out of it, just communicates what you need to know. The quick takeaways from what the longer article would have said. So that's a good way to, keep up on those things without, if you're not wanting all the details.
So like a YouTube thing?
It's not a YouTube. It's just housed on the NCGA website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can put it on YouTube, then you get enough, and then
maybe
they'll
we
pay
should.
You can be making all sorts of bank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not. I mean, the communications person at National Corn's
You're an
helping me with
economist,
that.
right?
I don't
You
do
have
the
to know
videos.
how to embezzle.
No, we want to not do that kind of thing. We want to stay on the up and up.
Why are you winking at me when you say that?
I'm not.
How many articles have you written?
So previously, before I came on at National Corn Growers Association, which I've maybe done 6 or 7-ish in my time there so far, and but prior to that, I worked for the University of Illinois and was part of the Farm Doc team for 5 years. And during that time, I was the author or co-author on 275 articles. But I will note that a lot of those I was a co-author on, and I can thank Gary Schnicke, who's an amazing economist at the University of Illinois.
Unsponsored plug.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
For Gary.
Yeah, so, Gary's really great, and so he was the lead author on a lot of those. Carl Zuloff, was also the lead author. Both of those are, really great, have been great mentors and people I really look up to, thankful I had the chance to work with.
Okay, you're in an industry that, number one, you're dominated by generally older males, right? Have you found that hard to carve your niche to where you're respected, you're looked at as an equal?
Maybe, but I feel like I maybe came up on more of that more earlier in my career. So my first job out of grad school was working for Illinois Farm Business Farm Management Association, and I was a field staff person. And so I was a young female. I was new to the area. And so I think I had a few people I was working with in that time that seemed a little bit resistant to me handling their accounting and tax work, but a lot were very welcoming.
Do you think it was the age or you being a chick?
I'm going to go with a combination of both.
I don't like young people.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I can relate to some extent. I mean, you when you're, as a farmer and knowing the importance of the tax and accounting work, you want someone who you feel like has experience, and so. I felt like I hit some of those challenges more in that era of my career, and then I have maybe more recently. I feel like in more recent years, people are generally opening to wanting to give me a chance, and I try to prove myself through my work and build credibility that way.
It's the pit vipers. I don't like when they wear the pit vipers.
Yeah.
I have a hard time listening to a young person that's wearing pit vipers.
Yeah.
So maybe don't wear the pit vipers.
Okay, I don't even know what pit vipers are. Should I?
No.
Okay.
You placed a 4th nationally at the American Farm Bureau Young Farmers and Ranchers Excellent in Ag Award. Okay, help me with that, because I know they do 2 awards, right? One's for like a farmer and then one's for like a professional in ag. Which one is this?
So the excellence is for someone who is a professional in agriculture. So my husband and I participated in that together as a team, and so the Achievement Award is for someone who has, a majority of their income is just from their farm operation. Yeah. So for us, I have my off-the-farm job. My husband also is a seed dealer. So while we are farming, we do have, other sources in agriculture of income as well. So anyway, that was that award.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, we got to represent Illinois. And
what'd you win?
We won I want to say a monetary prize. I think it was, and then we won
$1 million?
No, it was like $500, I think. And then a tool cabinet from Case IH.
Nice.
So yeah.
Too bad it wasn't a deer one, but hey.
Yeah, hey, I know we had we have deer on our farm, so but it is very nice, and it's still a good memento of that process and the honor that was.
Well, those competitions they're stupid competitive. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So to get 4th nationally, to win Illinois is a huge deal.
Yeah.
It was 2005. I was runner-up in the discussion meet.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic.
I actually won it, but the judges did not agree.
So you won the debate
I
or
did.
the discussion.
Oh, clearly. Yeah.
But the judges.
I think they're still talking about it. Yeah.
Sometimes you just don't know what the judges are.
A Dodge pickup, a brand new Dodge pickup.
I know those first place prizes are pretty amazing.
I think there was some bribery going on. Some ne'er-do-well stuff, but I've let all that go.
I can tell clearly.
Doesn't bother me at all.
Look at you now.
All right, you're talking to an audience that maybe is not so involved in agriculture.
Okay.
What do you want them to know about what you do with the corn growers?
Yeah, so our the National Corn Growers serves corn growers across the nation, and that includes both those who are dues-paying members of our state associations, but also any corn farmer who contributes towards corn checkoff. And so, what I do is try to serve the organization and our farmer members by providing economic analysis. We already talked about, some of what I do is for internal knowledge. Some of it is for external communication. So just trying to, help with evaluating what's happening and keeping up on the corn economy and being that resource for our organization.
Yeah. Where's the corn market going? Tell me, should I sold already?
It's sort of feeling that way, isn't it?
It's not looking great, is it?
Yeah. It's hard to say. We have a lot of dynamics going on. the weather this year is probably maybe what the biggest wild card that could make or break, the crop here. Looking at what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, I actually, that was my most recent article that I have out on the NCGA website, was looking at that, the situation there and, how that might impact. And then, we just have Brazil is really come on board as a huge competitor in the world market.
It's really annoying.
Yeah.
I mean, we had corn. That was our thing.
That was our thing, yeah. But they've really expanded, and they continue to expand their production area. And so, a lot of times when we think about trade in the world market, like when we had the trade situation back in 2018, and at that time, if trade flows were shifting, we could see maybe corn that normally had gone to China going somewhere else because you had a limited number of amount of corn in the market, or soybeans in the market, I should say. It was more of a soybean issue. But the point is that sometimes if one nation steps up and starts importing or exporting, you sort of fill in those differences and you just see trade flows shift.
Yeah.
But with Brazil, they are continuously producing more. And so it's, adding more supply into the world market. So it's definitely affecting the trade dynamics there.
So I asked you where the market was going, and you told me everything but. So I'm going to say you are going to be a huge success as an economist.
Okay.
If people want to find you on social media or more about you, where do they go?
Well, real quick, Rob, I want to say that I can't answer that question. I just was telling you all the different dynamics to consider. So anyway,
Economist, check.
where to find me. So I am not super active on any social media networks actually, but you can find me on them at Swanson Krista J, SWANSON, Krista Krista J. So that's my handle on any of the social
you're on
networks.
Twitter.
I
looked you up. We actually follow each other.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I used to use it more, and I just I don't. And I just.
Do you hate Elon Musk?
No, not at all. I just don't utilize really any social media networks all that much anymore, just because you only have so many hours in a day. So, yeah.
In all seriousness, having you as a representative of agriculture is fantastic. I mean, I've sat here for a half hour and tried to jab at you left and right, and you just handle it wonderfully. You're so poised. You speak so very well, and you have an ability to explain what's happening in the world agriculture economics to people like myself and to people that aren't in agriculture. See, even the camera people are nodding. So
well,
thank
you
you
so
for
much.
all that you do.
Yeah, well, thank you for all that you do. The same, many of the same things could be said about you, and your efforts to feature people in agriculture and get the message out that way too.
And we got time if you want to keep going with that.
Yeah. So I mean, there's so many great things I could say. So
I'm a little disappointed we didn't get some buttercream coming in here.
I should have brought a tub of frosting instead of the spatula.
Well, that would have been.
Or a cupcake maybe with some frosting on it.
Or like those funny brownies you used to sell in high school.
That I did not sell. Yeah.
Okay. If you want to email me, and go to sharkfarmer.com and tell me about the brownies you used to buy off Krista. Krista,
there was never such a market, so.
Okay, Krista. We'll let that one go.
Okay.
All right, Krista. Thank you. Krista Swanson from Oneida, Illinois. Krista, thank you so very much for everything that you do and for coming to the show. Really, really appreciate it. And everyone else, we'll catch you next time.